Food food is available if you'd like to start. Good morning. I want to get started, so we have plenty of time for our speaker this morning. Welcome to First Friday Breakfast Club. I'm Byron Huff, FFBC president. My pronouns are he, him, his. At this time, I'd like to offer any new FFBC attendee to introduce themselves. Don't be shy. Stand up and
And I'm originally from Gerardo, Missouri.
Okay, welcome. Yeah.
I'm from Montgomery, Alabama. I guess professionally, I am a contractor with the extension program, the Bureau of HIV hepatitis and STIs at Iowa. And
Welcome. Okay, welcome. Okay. FFBC is an association of LGBTQ individuals and their allies formed in 1996 and is a 501c3 entity making your contributions tax deductible. Since formation, BC has awarded over $550,000 for scholarships that are awarded annually to high school seniors who have done significant things in their schools and communities to reduce homophobia and educate on LGBTQ issues in their schools and communities. We awarded a record $23,000 scholarships at our June meeting this past June. The scholarships are awarded regardless of gender, gender identity, sexual orientation, or other protected characteristics. This is all thanks to the generous donors who recognize FFBC scholarships are important to help exceptional young students reach their higher education goals. All this is possible through our generous donors. I hope you'll consider a donation for our 2026 scholarships this next June. FFBC sends 2 emails per month, one for our meeting and one with our newsletter. If you're not receiving them, please send an email and we'll add you to our database. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, YouTube. We do post out there the meetings and a link to the newsletter. And also we do put the video of our speakers on YouTube. And there is a archive, which you can find on our website. Gay Men's Chorus announcements. Gay Men's Chorus is tonight and tomorrow. They have an afternoon and an evening tomorrow. If you don't have tickets, think about that. And let's see, Wes Mullins has a couple things.
yeah, don't miss that concert. It's good. I'm singing in the chorus, bagpipes, organ, all kinds of great music. It's going to be good. I'm here to give you a quick update about Capital City Pride and let you know that for the month of December, we're running a sale. So anyone who has an organization that usually gets a booth or a parade entry, those types of things, they're all on sale 10% off for the month of December for like early bird registration. So make sure you do that, save a little bit of money right now. And the same is true for the gala. Our March 14th is our annual gala at the Prairie Meadows Event Center, and all the tickets for that are also 10% off for the month of December. So get them now and save some money. Yeah.
Thank you, Wes. I think Rachel had an announcement.
Good morning. My name's Rachel Gulick. I use they, them pronouns, and I just wanted to share about the Iowa Pride Ensemble's first winter concert solstice eleganza event. There's more adjectives there than needed, but On the 21st of December at Roosevelt High School, Iowa Pride Ensembles, which premiered at Capital City Pride this summer with a marching band, you may have heard us band together, will be premiering our Coming Out of the Dark winter concert. And tickets for that event are $10. Students are free with a school ID, and it's at 3 p.m., so December 21st. And I'll just read you a quick little blurb about it. Whether you're a friend of Dorothy or simply curious about the yellow brick road of LGBTIQA+ composers and artists emerging from closets around the world and right here in Iowa, our inaugural concert band performance featuring a full spectrum of community musicians, composers, and directors is sure to shine with that unmistakable "there's no place like home" sparkle. So I hope to see you all there. And one more shout out for the Des Moines Gay Men's Chorus concerts this weekend. We are premiering a piece composed by Marie Harrington, who was the 2024 emerging composer, Peabody Institute or Conservatory artist, and it's absolutely a gorgeous show. So we hope to see you there also. Thanks.
Thank you, Rachel. I think that was all for announcements. I don't think I missed anyone. Capital City Pride has created a calendar, community calendar for LGBTQ events and activities. You can find a link on their website under resources, or we also, I believe, have it on our main page, a link. It's a great resource. If you have an event, please feel free to submit it, and it would be approved. Then you'll be on that. I think we're hoping it will be utilized by all organizations, LGBTQ organizations. Our next board meeting will be Tuesday, December 9th at 6:30 p.m. Members are welcome to attend. Let me know if you'd like to join us. And now Shara Vukovic will introduce our speaker this morning.
Well, first of all, I have to thank Jonathan and Scott for inviting Mark and me to be here this morning. We've been friends for quite some while and have always loved to support this organization. So I was happy to come and do this for this group and in celebration of Sarah. So I'm a retired public school teacher and a continuing advocate for public education. And a few years ago, one of our state legislators and then Senate president in Iowa made a speech indicating that teachers have a sinister agenda. I am a public school teacher. It wasn't long after that when Sarah was running against him for the Senate District 4 seat. And at that point, my husband and I became strong followers and supporters of Sarah. She defeated him, by the way. And this was just one of her adventures in turning Republican seats in hard-fought districts. And she will give you the details of all of that. But we need balance in Washington, and Sarah is our person for this. She's currently a state senator in District 14. She's served on the, see if I get most of these right, the Commerce, Education, Health and Human Services, and Natural Resources Committee. I maybe have left one out there, I'm not sure. Her background as a Lutheran pastor and hospital chaplain has taken her into many communities into Iowa's 3rd congressional district, and she knows Iowans and she knows their needs. Her work through DMAC as coordinator of the Interfaith Engagement has given her boots on the ground experience in bringing diverse religious communities together to respond to food security. But here's the thing, Sarah is smart. She is knowledgeable. She's compassionate and passionate about how she can be the leader that Iowa needs in the 3rd district. She knows how to fight in tough campaigns, and she knows how to win. And I would love for you to give a very warm welcome to Sarah Trone Garriott, our next District 3 representative, we hope.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sarah Trone Garriott, and I like to say that I'm a professional stranger. So Some of the ways I'm a little strange here is I'm an ordained Lutheran minister. I've been serving since 2008 in congregations, small town in West Virginia, rural community in Virginia, and suburban Iowa here. And in my work as a pastor, I have the opportunity to preach and visit and lead worship in all of these different communities that are willing to have a Lutheran lady pastor show up. And I currently serve as the coordinator of interfaith engagement for the Des Moines Area Religious Council Food Pantry Network. And in that role, I work with all the diverse religious communities that support that effort because food's important to everyone. It's literally a way we can bring people to the table. Despite all of our differences, which are significant, we always have things in common. And caring for our neighbors, showing hospitality and food is just a great way to break down barriers and bring people together. So I do events for our community to get to know your neighbors, visit those religious communities, celebrate special events and holidays together. And I do a camp every summer for high school students. So the students come from very diverse backgrounds. They don't have to be religious to be part of it, just interested in getting to know their neighbors. And as they explore the religious community of Des Moines, they're actually reflecting on themselves, their own faith, their own values, and they're creating these short digital storytelling projects about themselves because it's really important to learn how to be a stranger and show up in a new place and make connections and new relationships. Not everyone has those skills. It takes practice to do that. And so I like to share that with young people and continue to learn from them about how important it is to continue to do that work. And as part of it, I get to show up to everybody's festivals and celebrations and holidays, which I love. And so there's a picture of me at the Hindu Temple for Holi, which is a really wonderful celebration every March of the year. The community is invited. It's a great selfie holiday. Everyone's doing it. You're outside, you've got the colored powders on you. And there's music playing and food available. It's a wonderful celebration. And I asked our neighbors, why do you do this? And they said, well, there's so many ways we are divided in India: religion, caste, language, culture. There's a lot of ways that people are separate and divided. But in this festival, everyone's the same in the mess. And I love that. You know, you're covered with all these colors, and we remember we're just human together. And that's a great way to begin the year and begin the spring. And one of the strangest things of all that I've been doing is I am state senator for District 14, which is the southeastern corner of Dallas County, first elected in 2020. And in that work, I get to walk into all of these new issues and concerns and communities. I'm constantly showing up in places where I'm the only Democrat in the room, or I'm knocking on people's doors, and not everyone's happy to see you when you show up like that. But it's an opportunity to make a connection and meet people in the community so that I can serve them better. So my journey to being a professional stranger really started a long time ago. And it's been able to help me talk about two issues that many people find difficult and uncomfortable: religion and politics. We've all heard that those are things you shouldn't talk about in polite company, but if I couldn't talk about those things, there wouldn't be much I'd get to say. So I like to remind people that religion is about how we live together, and so is politics. I mean, ideally, that's what we're doing in both of those realms. And so faith should have something to say to how we live together as a civil society. And there is an important role that faith has there, but it's important for us to have good boundaries and respect for differing beliefs and opinions when we bring our whole selves into the process. Because we really can't leave our deeply held values off to the side when we're engaging as a member of this community. And so it's important to acknowledge those things and be aware of them and be thoughtful about them. So my journey really started way back in 1999. I had graduated from college with a history degree. My dad was an auto mechanic. My mom was a 2-year AA nurse. And they said, what are you going to do? How are you going to get a job with a 4-year history degree? And I said, I don't know. But what I ended up doing is I went to Gallup, New Mexico for a year to serve as an AmeriCorps Vista volunteer. And that was my first real big experience with being a stranger. So I jumped into this idea. I had read a book by Barbara Kingsolver called The Bean Trees, and it was all about the Southwest United States. And I was like, I should try that. I should go there. And that was about as much thought as I had put into it. I also thought, well, maybe I want to go to law school if I have a history degree. So I ended up working for a legal aid program in Gallup, New Mexico, in the Four Corners area, on a domestic violence project. And when I arrived there that first day, I showed up in Gallup in the office of the legal aid, and I was already feeling really overwhelmed because I turned on the radio as I'm driving into town, and the commercials for the tire store were in Navajo. Mostly Navajo, little Hispanic, tiny bit Anglo, which is what they call white people there. And so I was definitely in the minority for the first time in my life. And I showed up at the legal aid office and had been told, well, your supervisor, they'll give you somewhere to live for a few days and help you find your bearings. He met me in the office with a bedroll and said, you can sleep here till you find a place to live. I'll see you on Monday. And he left. So that was my welcome to town. I never slept in the office. I figured it out. I made friends really fast and found a place to live. But one of the challenges while I was there is that the legal aid office really had nothing going on that project. So I ended up going out into the community and visiting with folks and having one-on-ones and asking about the issue of domestic violence. And it wasn't legal issues that I was hearing about, it was religious issues. And lots of folks who were seeking help from religious communities encountering barriers, being blamed for their abuse, bad theology. And so what I ended up doing in that year was coordinating a conference for faith leaders on domestic violence to help them do a better job. And I got a sense that that was a useful direction to go in when one of the pastors who was part of planning with me said, now I see why this is important. It was happening in my community all the time, but people did not trust me enough to tell me. And so for a pastor who had been serving 30 years in his parish to say that he learned something from me, I was like, okay, there's something here. So I wanted to pursue this work. How can I help faith leaders do a better job for their communities, especially on the issue of violence against women? And I ended up going to graduate school at Harvard Divinity School to figure out what the next step was and how to talk about my faith in a way that could be a resource for people in need. And one of the really good things that happened during my time there is I met a bunch of young Presbyterians who were becoming ministers, and they opened my eyes to the possibilities because I had never seen myself in the role of a faith leader. It wasn't something I had planned on doing, but they showed me that there's a lot of different kinds of leadership needed in the church, and that could be really beneficial to the faith communities. And so I wasn't quite ready to become a minister yet. So I ended up working as a hospital chaplain for a year in Philadelphia at a training program for folks who wanted to go into chaplaincy. And the first day I arrived at that program, they said, someone needs to be on call and spend the night here. And I drew the short straw. I didn't even know how the pager worked, and I was responding to car accidents and gunshot victims in the emergency room. That night, I baptized 2 babies they were coding in the NICU. It was an incredibly traumatic year, but I made it through. And I realized that I had some of the resources it took to show up for a community, and that, if I could do this, I could be a minister. And so I moved to Chicago and started seminary there at the Lutheran School of Theology at Chicago. And while I was there, I worked as a chaplain at the Children's Hospital in Chicago for 2 years, nights, weekends. And in that service, realized that to show up for a community, it meant being present. And so I would just spend my nights, because I worked from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m., walking the halls, hanging out with the nurses, talking to all the staff in the building, the people who clean the rooms, the folks who serve the food in the cafeteria, the security guards, any parent I saw walking the halls at night, any kid that couldn't sleep, any baby that needed to be held and rocked. And by showing up, I was able to build trusting relationships with folks. And then they would call on me when they needed me. and I was better able to respond because I knew about the resources that were available there and the people I could bring together to be part of that response. And I've taken that with me into every kind of work that I've done. So I ended up moving to rural Virginia to serve as a pastor in a parish. It was a holler off the Shenandoah Valley, and you didn't see the sunrise or set because the mountains were kind of on both sides. Martin Luther Evangelical Lutheran Church here at a crossroads. We were 20 miles from the nearest grocery store. And I took the church directory and went out and visited everybody where they lived, because that was how you got to know the community, showing up where people were. I was definitely a stranger. This was a community where if you grew up 5 miles down the road, you were not from there. And then I was coming from Chicago and, all the other places. It wasn't until my kids were born there and they were from there. I wasn't. I was always going to be a come here, not a from here. But we were able to weather some really challenging times together as a congregation because I built those relationships and invested in showing up where the people were. I was on maternity leave with my first child for 4 weeks, and there was a group in the congregation that tried to lead a mutiny and take the church out of the denomination. There had been a change in our policy, and the church decided together, the whole church-wide, that we would have people in same-sex relationships be pastors and leadership in our church. And there were a few folks that really were struggling with that. And so while I was on leave, they had a meeting about leaving the denomination. And that was really hard for me. So I did what I know best, which is showing up. As soon as I came back, I went and visited with every person in the congregation to figure out how big the problem is, hear people's concerns, and be honest with them about where I was. I was not going to leave with them. I thought it was a good change, but, needed to respectfully be with them in their struggles. It ended up being a really small group of people. And a lot of folks were really turned off by how they were approaching the issue. And so we had a number of folks leave the congregation, but we actually came through a lot stronger and healthier after that. So Virginia's not home for me. My husband's from Kentucky. I'm from Minnesota. And we were always, looking for where's the next place to be. My husband was offered a job at Drake University. So we moved to Iowa. And I served as a pastor at Faith Lutheran Church in Clive, which was a lot different from my first congregation. So my first congregation, when you looked out the windows, you saw sheep in the fields and mountains, West Virginia on 2 sides. Here at Faith, you look out the windows and you see Whole Foods and Best Buy across the street. So 10 times bigger in every way, but the same things are still important for those folks, that you show up for them, that you're with them in the hard times and the celebrations. I got to be part of some really important life moments with the folks in that congregation, but life kept calling me on to the next thing. And for me, being out in the community as a minister was incredibly important. And so I really felt my calling was out of the building. And so in 2017, I left the parish and became the coordinator of interfaith engagement for the Des Moines Area Religious Council. And I get to be pastor to the wider community through this role. So sometimes I say I'm a free-range minister in this work. I get invited to preach and preside and visit. I do a lot of the presentations and education for DMARC. And I get to have relationships with all of these wonderful communities. And so I say I'm everyone's favorite Lutheran minister, whether you're the atheist freethinkers, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Bosnian Muslim community, the Sikh community, the Hindu community. I have deep mutual relationships, respect with these different communities, and I learn from all of them. Because I firmly believe that when you get to know your neighbors, you see things in them that you can admire and appreciate, and that can inspire you to reflect on your own belief or values, wherever they're coming from, and grow in that. Because I see in my neighbors things that I really admire and say, how could I live that out in my own authentic way? For example, with the Sikh community, they wear the turban to stand out in the crowd like a sore thumb. That is truly the intention, is they want to be highly recognizable as a member of that community because their calling is to help their neighbors. And I think that's wonderful. I'm not going to start wearing a turban, but how can I, as a Christian, stand out in the community and stand out in the crowd as someone who's there to help? And that's how it helps me with my relationships with all these communities be a better Lutheran. So I am so close to the Capitol, and there's something about that place that once you spend some time in it, you end up finding yourself there a lot. My state senator invited me to pray, and every day there was prayer in the House and the Senate. So I have feelings about prayer in public spaces like this. If it's going to happen, I think it should be for everyone. And so I went down and shared a prayer to be respectful of all the diversity in our state, religious and non-religious. And then I started paying attention to what was happening in that building. And I didn't like what I saw. Really concerned about our public schools and making sure we were funding them appropriately and supporting them as they needed. I was really concerned about gun violence, so I started showing up with Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense. And reproductive rights was a really important issue for me. And so I was at the Capitol with Planned Parenthood and with a lot of women who were very concerned the first time they tried to ban abortion at 6 weeks. And this picture actually ended up on the front page of the Cedar Rapids Gazette. And this was while I was still serving in my congregation. So there's some folks who had some feelings about that. But this fellow was just saying terrible things to the women who were gathered there. So I had to stand up to him. And I ran into my state senator just after this. And I asked him, what would happen to a woman that has an ectopic pregnancy if this bill passes? And he said, what's that? He didn't even know about a very common pregnancy-related challenge that really needed the intervention of abortion. And so the fact that he did not understand, and he was so dismissive of the fact that he wasn't aware and didn't understand, I realized it was time to step up in a bigger way. So I ran against him for state senate. This was the state senator who invited me to pray. So it's a hard thing to run for office. I have a family. I've got 2 boys. They're 13 and 15 now. My husband, he's got his work too. And so it's a challenge balancing these things. There's a lot of juggling that happens. Like this morning when I was like, oh, by the way, I have to leave at 6:30 and you've got to get the kids to school. But we've been able to make it work. And my family is super supportive and understanding. So in 2020, I first ran for state senate. That year was a terrible year for Iowa Democrats. On election night, everybody I knew lost, but I was able to flip my seat. And I wasn't going in on the blue wave like I thought. So I had to reorient myself. I was walking into a situation that was really different than I expected. And I know from being in the hospital, there are always opportunities, no matter what. Even when the worst thing is going to happen, you can always make things better. And so I took that approach to state government and realized a lot of our neighbors don't know who represents them or what's happening in that building or how to use their voice if they do. And so I've spent a lot of time educating the public and trying to engage people and bring voices into the process because I believe the public voice is very powerful. And I felt a lot of, just positive opportunities with that work. But 2 years later, they changed the district lines. And every 10 years it happens. It's a very fair process in Iowa. But for me, it wasn't so great. They cut my district in half on the county line. And I had a choice. I could either run against my Democratic colleague, Claire Celsi, in a primary, or we could sell our house and move so that I could take on Jake Chapman, the state Senate president. He had been going to school board meetings and threatening teachers and librarians with jail time. I actually met one of the librarians yesterday who said he pointed at me in that meeting and said, I'm going to send you to prison because he was so into the book banning and such a bully towards our public school teachers. If I didn't move, he would just get to keep his seat for another 2 years. So I was the only person who had that opportunity to challenge him as an incumbent on the west side of my district. So I went home and I told my husband, we need to sell our house. And he said, okay. because it's really important that we stand up for the people we care about, what we believe in. We stand up to bullies, but that means sacrifice. And so we sold our house, we moved because we had done all that and I'd put my family through it. I was not going to lose. We knocked doors like crazy. We turned out in force and we flipped that seat in a year that Cindy Axney lost her congressional seat. Tom Miller lost his seat. Mike Fitzgerald lost his seat. We went further into the minority in the House and the Senate, but we were able to beat Jake Chapman by 3 points in an R+5 district in a year that Kim Reynolds won that district by 7 points. So we were able to outperform everyone because we worked as hard as we possibly could with lots and lots of people helping. I did that knowing I was going to have to run again 2 years later and hold on to that seat. And again, 24 was a terrible year for Iowa Democrats. Lots of folks lost their seats and we went even deeper into the minority. But even though Trump won my district, I won my district too, because I show up for all of my neighbors, and the showing up, the being present, that's what cuts through those attack ads and all of the money that pours into races. Being with the community and caring about people, it matters. It really does. And a lot of my Republican and independent constituents tell me, I don't vote for the party, I vote for the person. But if folks don't get to meet the person, they default to the party. So we weren't even through the recount in 2024. And I said to my husband, I've asked a lot of you. We sold our house and moved. I've run every 2 years in really tough races. It's been all consuming for our family. It's been really hard on us. I know you're really excited about me finally having a 4-year term in the Senate and not having to run again in 2026. But I need to run again. This is a really important time. It really matters what we do in this moment. And the next election is critical. We have to flip the U.S. House. We've got to win. Because if we don't win, we don't get to govern. We don't get to stand up for the people we care about. We don't get to stand up for what we believe in. We don't get to stand up to bullies. And we have to do that in this time. It is absolutely critical. And I have more to offer. And so that's why I'm running. We're off to a great start. We have a lot of wonderful grassroots support. We have a great foundation to build on. 6 years of knocking thousands of doors every cycle, showing up, working so hard, being present for people, and doing all that we can to connect across all kinds of diversity, especially political diversity. We have an opportunity to bring people together in this moment. And I think a lot of our neighbors want to see government work for them. They want somebody standing up for them in Washington and speaking out against the rising costs that are making it so hard for folks to provide for their families. They want us to stand up for the rights of our neighbors and for the future of our communities, and to be making good, thoughtful decisions that center the dignity and value of people. We need that because we're seeing the damage already. And so we're off to a great start. And I welcome you to be part of this. We have a long way to go. We have done over 100 events. We have been knocking doors for weeks. We've raised well over $1 million in 6 months. But, we've got 11 months ahead in 2026. And so your good word matters. If you want to work with us, we have lots of opportunities to help get out the word. And we're working really hard to raise the resources it will take to win this race, because there's a lot of money in politics. But we know that hard work and lots of people helping can overcome a lot of out-of-state money that's rolling in for my incumbent opponent. And we know that it's really important that people have hope. That's the most important thing of all. A lot of folks in Iowa have been discouraged. They've been frustrated. People all across the political spectrum are sick of politics as usual, because honestly, it has not been working for people. We need change. We need something new. we have the opportunity to create better change and do it together. So I thank you all for your time today, for hearing my story of what it's meant to be a stranger in a community and show up. But you know that by showing up, you make the difference. So thank you for being here today. I don't know if you do question and answer or you just want me to leave now. Yes. What's the highest priority for change? I want Congress to do its job. Right now, it's just rolling over. They have completely abdicated their responsibility. And so their job means showing up for the people in this district. So we need a representative who's actually having town halls, actually showing up and listening to people, not just the folks who are in agreement, but showing up for lots and lots of folks in this community. And then speaking out on those issues that are important to people in Iowa. And so the top issues that I'm seeing right now is the cost of living just keeps going up. We heard all these promises about how it was going to be reined in and make life more affordable for people, and it just hasn't happened. We're seeing all of these significant policy decisions made on a whim, tariffs, destroying our farm economy. And there's so much in Iowa that's connected to that, the farmers. But farmers are looking at a crisis on the scale of the 1980s. There will be people losing generations of family farms. It's going to be heartbreaking and devastating for our economy up and down the line. And we need to have somebody who's speaking out against these reckless decisions that are just creating chaos for our economy. Healthcare. We cannot cut Medicaid. The more uninsured people in Iowa means that they're still going to show up for care, but then the hospital is going to have to bear that cost, which means they spread it to all of us. Anyone who has insurance, they're going to raise your costs. And there are so many hospitals struggling to stay open right now with the level that Medicaid pays back for services. It was already really hard. And if you have less people who are insured, less people who can pay their bills, we're going to see closures. We're already hearing about cuts and closures that are coming in anticipation of those cuts. I work for a food pantry network. There are so many people struggling to make ends meet and pay their bills. And we're taking away the little bit of food assistance that's available for people and making it so much harder for folks to access that. So it's already been taken away from refugees and immigrants with legal status. They're going to be losing SNAP assistance, which is a little bit of help to help them buy food. That's devastating. And we're going to see cuts that'll kick even more people in need off. The program's already not doing enough, and it's going to be doing even less very soon. And the charity community can't make up the difference. And we saw that with the government shutdown and the delays in getting SNAP benefits out. It was pretty devastating. That week was overwhelming for food pantries and feeding programs. So those are a few of the things that are really important to do. But overall, making sure the public has a voice in their government is incredibly important to me. And being transparent about what's happening in that building and making sure people feel connected is important to me too, because the process works so much better when the people are part of it. Yes. Okay.
For me, one of the primary responsibilities is to educate the public. And I don't see most of our politicians use that skill, that leadership role.
Yeah.
Educating.
Yeah.
Meet people who have prideful ignorance.
Yeah.
We have to have leaders who are going to tell us the difficult facts of life, rather than just trying to appeal to their opinions and agree with. I remember Hubert Humphrey one time speaking in a crowd.
Yeah.
Tell you this is what you want to say. This is what you have to hear.
Yeah.
And I'd be anxious to see how you do in telling us what we need to hear.
Yeah.
That people are hearing.
Yeah. I think educating the public is really important. And often I'll hear from colleagues, well, and I hear this in ministry too, oh, the people are not going to understand. It's like, no, you have to present the information in a way that people can. Folks are overwhelmed, they're busy, they have a lot going on, and there's a lot of misinformation out there. So how do you engage and connect? I do a lot on social media. I spend a lot of time on my legislative newsletter. I try to be very informative. I show up to a lot of communities and talk about specific issues and how to advocate. There are just so many ways and so many channels to be able to do that. And I do see a resistance among a number of my colleagues across the political spectrum on using social media, but it's just another way to meet people. It's another place people are gathering. And I'm one of the few people that's actually made friends on Twitter. And it's like we can choose to use these modes of communication in a productive way. There's a lot of not great things happening in social media, but we can make it work for us in an engaging and powerful way. And it's about building community and connection. I think the greatest need people have is to feel like they're part of something, because a lot of folks feel very isolated and alone. But, and that's always a challenge for me, is I love to get into the details and the weeds about stuff. And so, how do you keep it simple and digestible and effective on the issues? Because there's so much to talk about, but that is a priority for me, and it has been. So one of my proudest moments, my first year I was in the state Senate, I made this video about how to use the legislative website, because you needed to use it if you wanted to participate. Things weren't happening in person at the Capitol the way they normally would. And so if you wanted to be on a subcommittee meeting, here's how you got to Zoom and how you could be part of it and share your voice. So I made this little video. It was very nerdy. And the Iowa Standard, which is a very conservative blog, featured the video. And they're like, this is a great video. She thinks everyone should wear masks, but this is a great video. And I was really proud that they acknowledged that that was a really helpful tool. I think there's a really big opportunity for elected leaders to educate the public, and it's really important. Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
That you have somebody on the other side
Yeah.
that find common areas.
Yeah.
I back off.
Okay. Yeah. It's hard.
On a practical level that you talk about that helps you connect with those people who are strongly opposed to where you stand.
Yeah, so for me, relationship building is really important. So I have gone to visit some of my Republican colleagues in their hometowns, had lunch with them, and that helps people remember, hey, we are human beings together. Because sometimes that is what you've got to do, is build that connection and that awareness. And especially for some of my, constituents who feel very strongly that, well, if they are in this political camp, then they can't like or talk to people in the other. We've got to break down that idea and find a way to connect. I preach at churches, and a lot of congregations are still very politically mixed, and that's a great place for people to come together around common values. And one of the congregations I was preaching it on the south side, I was having a conversation with one of the members who'd gotten to know me over a few weeks I was filling in. And he was sharing about his pain that his friend wouldn't talk to him anymore after the election because this guy had voted for Trump. And he didn't quite understand why his friend was so hurt. And he was very hurt to lose this friendship. And so we had a conversation about that. And he said, well, I guess I'll just keep praying that one of us changes. And I said, you both probably will have to. That's hard. I know that's really hard. And you don't have to be in relationship with people who are abusive or hurtful to you. But there are a lot of opportunities to connect with folks who actually really aren't that far apart. It's surprising to me all the ways that we can find common ground. And, connect on issues, but it takes some work and you have to push yourself into some uncomfortable places. It's good to have support when you're doing that. It can be frustrating and hard, but it also can be really joyful. So, all right. One more question there.
Position, regulating social media companies for putting up product that's on level of addictiveness.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's important that we look at that and reflect on that because we've seen some pretty damning information about how social media can be used to hurt people and manipulate. And we've seen some really negative impacts. I don't have a particular policy proposal, but I'm open to it because as technology changes, as the world changes, government needs to respond. We're pretty slow in that. And I'm very aware of the power that it has for good or bad, and I think government has a role for sure. Yeah. All right.
Okay. Wow. Thank you, Sarah. She's a very good politician. They can talk. That's important about almost anything, and intelligently. That's even better. Some can't do that, but we won't go there. Politics has become polarized with no real middle ground, it would seem. And religion's been inserted as a reason to vote for a particular candidate. Sarah's approach to reach across the aisle is refreshing. Her respect for differing opinions, her experience in the faith community, and politics will help mend the divide. It's unfortunate that money has corrupted our politics. We need diversity and representation. The moral of the story is vote. You have no reason to complain if you don't do your civic duty. So, upcoming speakers next month. Note it July 9th. It's not the first Friday. We thought January 2nd might not be the best day, so we pushed it out to the 9th. Matt Russell, who is Executive Director of Iowa Farmers Union. I believe he will have a very interesting speech, so I encourage you to listen. He has a completely opposite opinion of we had the Farm Bureau speak. I think where he's coming from will help explain more maybe small farmers. And I grew up on a farm, small farm. They're going away. Plus the environment. We all know the effect that it's having on our water. Iowa is one of the worst in the country for nitrates, and it's coming from farming. And Farm Bureau seems to just want to sweep that under the rug and protect farmers, but that's not protecting everyone. So, not to talk about that too much, we are booked out through May, so I encourage you to go to our website. We are putting future speakers there in our newsletter. Also, the community calendar. I'm putting even more out there that you don't even see on our website. Because I said we're booked through May, which is a good thing. And we have some really good speakers. I hope all of you will come back, invite your friends. But thank you, everyone, and have a great weekend.